welcome to our pastor's recap of the first day of the Southern Baptist Convention's annual meeting for 2025. They're meeting in Dallas, and so we're glad to have you joining us tonight as we try to give at least an overview, not an extensive recap, but try to hit on some of the high points, some of the main things that happened during that time. I have with me tonight two pastors that are joining me. First is Warren Gilpin. Warren is from Virginia and pastoring there, has a long history with Southern Baptists for many, many years. And then also Pastor Matt Vroman, who pastors now in Alaska and actually served in Turkey, et cetera, et cetera. So he has a long history of Southern Baptists as well. So guys, we're glad to have you joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Well, tonight we're going to jump into trying to recap basically what's taken place and what's happened with the first day of the annual meeting. Not as many sparks flew today as probably will fly tomorrow. And that's primarily because the majority of voting on motions and that kind of thing is going to happen tomorrow, not today. And so that's pretty significant. There were a number of votes today, but not as many as there will be tomorrow, especially the controversial things. So I want to talk about several different things as we look at it tonight. We're going to talk about the executive committee. We're going to talk about the North American Mission Board IMB report, International Mission Board report, touch on send relief, a little bit about that and some comments we saw on that, and deal with some of the motions that were brought up. Many of the motions were taken back. In fact, let me look. I wrote it down here. We had, if I counted right, there were 29 motions that were put on the floor in the two different sessions where they had new motions allowed, permitted. And so that's a lot of motions. They did come back. The committee came back and disallowed some of those. The only one that was referred, that was sent to the executive committee today, was the one on establishing a child care or a children's kind of a Sunday at that for the executive committee to evaluate that and to look at that. But let's jump into some of these other things. Some of the motions that were brought forth that they dealt with. First, the NAMB motion was referred, and that was or it was referred to NAMB. I'm sorry, I said executive committee, but that was on special needs children, but on special needs ministry, particularly for children, is what they were dialoguing about. And then the others they referred to as complex matters. And the complex matters, one of the first ones that were dealt with was the one that they're calling the Sanchez motion, or it's likened to the law amendment that was presented last year. And this is wanting to make an amendment to the Constitution of the Southern Baptist Convention. Many of the same arguments, but it is written a little bit different than the law amendment was last year. And so they did present to suspend the rule. A messenger asked to suspend rule number 6 of the Constitution and bylaws so that they could schedule it for a vote. There was a ballot vote. The affirmative took it to do that. And so they have now scheduled that to be presented for a vote in this annual meeting, and then be able to dialogue and do the pros and cons of that. And that will happen on Wednesday, tomorrow, at 3:05 Central Time, 3:05 Central Time. And so that was the first one that there was a complex issue that they presented on that. There were several others, but let me just jump to you guys real fast. Were there any others that jumped out, or maybe even comment on that one in particular, if you think there was something there before they're going to hash that one out as such? Any other surprises?
One thing I really liked about the disability or the children's one, if I remember, I was watching online after, there was a excitement about it, but then the clapping. And again, this year I'm kind of trying to look for some positives, and just to see Southern Baptists and Christian people are so compassionate. And that's maybe, it's easy to miss that, but to hear the applause for, let's do something That's neat. I mean, just
Yeah,
unifying
you don't see
around.
that a lot of times. You hear more about the fights than you do the positive stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other thing was there was something referred that they said was out of motion, and it was directing the credentialing committee. And I was thinking, well, you all wanted to know about how, a couple conventions ago, I think it was the Dallas one last time, about, well, what about pastors and women pastors? And I just think it's amazing how there seems, and again, I can't read minds, but the boots on the ground, it seems like there's always this way to wiggle around this issue of standing on doctrine on complementarianism, that women cannot be pastors.
Right.
Yeah, and there seems to be a lot of back and forth at times. Even I saw a quick clip of J.D. Greer, who was at, I think it was the Baptist 21. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it was the Baptist 21 luncheon, or maybe Baptist Review luncheon that they had, and he was affirming that they still, he came out against the law amendment last year and was still saying that that really wasn't necessary, although that there were some pluses and minuses to it. And people who are opposed, for the most part, to the law amendment last year, Sanchez amendment this year, are opposed to trying to embed that in the Constitution per se. And I understand the legalities, some of the issues of legality of pluses and minuses, and if you start drawing a line here, then you've got another line here and another line here. And when are you going to stop drawing the line? You all of a sudden become extremely fundamentalist, in that sense of you're trying to monitor and you're trying to control what individual churches do. And of course, the autonomy of the local church is a Baptist standard from its beginning, at that point. Warren, what did you perceive as far as this whole idea? Now, let me just say real quickly that they are going to come back and vote on that, as I said, tomorrow at 3:05 Central Time. So any thought on that? And there's one other one that kind of surprised me I want to bring up here, Warren.
No, really, I agreed with Pastor Matt. It was a mixed bag, but I agree with him, especially about the children. And then in this particular thing, I'm not shocked, honestly, that that we're in that position with it. I'm really not, I know that sounds like a roundabout way to say that, but it's going to be amazing to me how this all shakes out.
Well, and I don't doubt that at all. Let's jump on another motion real quick that was scheduled. One of the motions, and there were several that were brought forth regarding the ERLC, to
Right.
abolish the ERLC, to amend the ERLC's ministry statement. What is the ministry statement is, but they scheduled the motion to abolish the ERLC for Wednesday morning at 11:45. And so that one is scheduled for tomorrow at 11:45. In fact, several messengers came back and argued on the floor about the Sanchez amendment, that they wanted it moved up to the earlier time. And the committee came back and said, we can't move it to that time. And they eventually said that it was because they had scheduled this abolish the ERLC motion at that time. And of course, there's going to be a lot of questions and debate regarding that. But let's jump on that one real quick. The motion regarding the abolishment of the ERLC. What was your feeling about the way that played out in the hall today?
Well,
Warren,
I think
go ahead. Go ahead, Matt.
No, go ahead, Matt.
I think it's more it played out leading up to this.
Okay.
I have seen a change in the
I agree.
ERLC, but for example, up until a week or two ago, they had all these COVID articles on their website, and then lo and behold, I checked a couple days ago and it's gone. And I'm like, they're really playing politics. And I think when you have a convention built on cooperation, it's like it is the divisive issue. And so as much as I have seen them trying to re-engage things, the question is, well, are you just doing that to save your entity? And so Pastor Willie Rice who I got to interview on my YouTube channel. We'll see what happens tomorrow, but the biggest hope I have is even if they don't vote for it, Brent Leatherwood either resigns or he's shaking in his boots and has a humble attitude and really takes
Right.
this seriously. But I don't anticipate that. I think they'll just keep doing what they're doing.
I, I read I read Willie's motion. I know Willie. I've known Willie a long time, and I thought it was very well written. I thought it was very well spoken, and like you two guys, I've seen that entity and what it's done, and it has gone so far from what its original intent was, or at least that's my opinion.
Yeah, it seems like it well, and I've said before when we've done some of these other roundtables, what the intent was and the ministry statement. I think we need representation. We need that. The problem is Leatherwood particularly, but the ERLC also have seemed to step out ahead and been advocating for things that Southern Baptists hadn't said anything about and hadn't asked them to advocate for, like the Tennessee shooting, there at the Covenant School. He came out very strongly opposing releasing the manifest. Southern Baptists hadn't asked him to do that at that point. I understand he lives in Nashville. He has close friends that had kids in the school, and there were a lot of personal issues, but we don't appoint him or elect him in that sense to be representing his personal, his personal ideas. In that sense, he's supposed to be representing Southern Baptists without any doubt, at that point.
And Brother Bobby,
go ahead.
Real quick, Brother Bobby, I want to add something. When he does that, he's doing it, and saying it, and many times, even if he doesn't say it, implying it, that the Southern Baptists have spoke on this. It's not just him speaking out, but he has spoken out consistently saying, this is what the Southern Baptists, blah, 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 and it's not true. And it's just, the last thing about that, if we have a political entity like the ethics group, anytime they speak, it's going to rile half the country, half the convention up or more. So it's by definition where we're at as a country of convention. It's an agency of division. So it needs to go away.
Well,
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. I really couldn't.
Yeah, before the Christian Life Commission, both always there's division about issues, for a long time, like pro Roe v. Wade, the arguments were, about abortion, all that kind of thing. Now that Roe v. Wade had been overruled by the Supreme Court, now the battle is coming at that differently. And, Matt, we talked about it before we went live, a little bit about the abolitionist movement and some of the division that's there. Let's come back and talk about that a little bit, because that came up in the afternoon as we talked about some of the other motions that were made. But let's look real quickly for a moment here at a couple of things. The Morning Time held the North American Mission Board and their report about crossover. And I wished I'd gotten a screenshot of the crossover report. That's always an exciting report. One note I'll make about the crossover report that I noticed in some of that, the total number of churches participating in crossover just in the last few years seems to be much less as far as the volume of churches, the total number of churches. I don't know how many in the numbers of volunteers are involved, but that's not a good sign. But you always want to rejoice in those who come to faith, those who connect with churches. All of those kind of things are great reports to hear in crossover. But then they went on, and we can come back and talk a little bit more about some of the IMB and NAMB report that they made. But they jointly made a report in regard to send relief. And as they were talking about send relief, they're talking about how important that is. I'm always frustrated when I hear about send relief, because that was one of the attempts that was made to get rid of disaster relief, what we know oftentimes as the Yellow Shirt Army. And thousands and thousands of volunteers have been trained over the years in disaster relief. Almost all state conventions had a disaster relief ministry. Many associations, particularly in the South, they'll have their own trailers for mud out units, for chainsaw units, all that kind of thing. Some with childcare units, that kind of thing. And that's all a part of that. Well, when Send Relief came in, they basically tried to eliminate disaster relief, and there was such upheaval from a groundswell against it that they ended up keeping it. And so you still see that. You still see disaster relief, but Send Relief is what they continually want to push. They want to brand it as that. But let me give you one illustration of one thing that concerned me a little bit. And let's talk about this just a little bit from Chitwood, when Paul Chitwood made this remark. And he said this in the report. He said, Send Relief does not receive a designated line item in our budget allocation that we'll be voting on at this convention from the cooperative program. But Send Relief is supported by the cooperative program. The cooperative program allocation that comes to the North American Mission Board and the International Mission Board gives Send Relief the foundational support that it needs to exist as your global compassion ministry. Partnering gifts beyond that give us great opportunities to make impact. That's a direct quote from Paul Chitwood. So my question, and the highlights, the bold and the highlights are my doing. He obviously didn't do that in his vocal, but he's saying the cooperative program is only giving Send Relief its foundational support. And then that other statement I highlighted is partnering gifts beyond that, beyond the cooperative program, give great opportunities for impact. Now, individuals can give individually to Send Relief, but what we know from government records, not from Send Relief or from the North American Mission Board, but from government records, what we know is that they have lobbied the government. Over $600,000 was the last we saw, to be able to get government funding for Send Relief to go and do government work. So how much has the government given Send Relief? How much have they provided in the way of buying food, in the way of providing different resources that Send Relief has worked with? I don't know. It's just a big concern to me. What about you guys? Does that bother you at all?
I find it very troubling. I really do. But I went to the old school. I don't like to see government supporting financially Southern Baptist entities. That concerns me when it in a control sense. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I just feel like that gives them an end that I'm just not comfortable with. And there's no accountability.
Well, it's the same kind of concerns that people have about the ERLC receiving money from the Immigration Table Fund, the Soros funded fund, and all these other kind of the outside money. There's got to be strings attached. There's got to be influence attached at that point. And that is, that's obviously a concern. Matt, what are your thoughts about this whole idea of them stating point blank cooperative program is really just foundational?
Well, yes, it was point blank, but you had to catch it. And again, okay, the convention can decide to do that, but they should be allowed to decide to do that. I wouldn't agree with it. I agree with Warren. Let's not take any government funds, but if the convention, but the problem is they have this Send Relief, which is like a NAMB slush fund, but that's my opinion. But the whole thing is like, okay, are we entitled to see behind the, what's going on behind the thing? But again, they don't want to provide that. It'd be one thing if they provided a spreadsheet for the messengers to truly evaluate it, but no, you're not entitled to that. You can't click on a list of all the properties that NAMB owned. You can't get all the ways the government is sending money in, the immigration, all these outside groups. And as you said, Bobby, so what's the big deal? We're reaching people with the gospel. The big deal is those come with strings attached. We would
That's right.
assume it always does, but we don't even know what the strings. Is there contract signed? Who's doing it? It's not, I don't think it's ethical with the bylaws, and I could be wrong, but the whole thing is, it gets back to transparency and knowing the truth. And could they
Well,
at least provide it? And then they vote. And then if the messenger vote on it, I'll be upset. Warren will be upset. Some of us will be upset. But again, let the Southern Baptist Convention messengers decide if they want to go that route.
well, and
Exactly.
the reality is it is in direct conflict with the
Mhm.
business and financial plan. The Southern Baptist approved business and financial plan. And the existing plan, the way it is right now, says that we're not supposed to be soliciting funds from anywhere else. That
True.
no entity is supposed to be doing that. And yet here NAMB is doing that. And one of the issues, we're going to talk about the proposed business financial plan in just a moment, but one of the issues with that is the lack of transparency currently, where we know of many instances right now where NAMB has gone against that financial plan. I've told the story before. I'll just hit it real quick. But I know of one situation where an individual was sent to NAMB to be a trustee from that state, and NAMB met him, liked him, and hired him to be one of their Sin City coordinators. Happened in Michigan while I was there. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You can't hire a trustee to be a Sin, well, anything actually. It doesn't have to be just Sin City coordinator. Anything that you're paying them for, that's opposed, that's in conflict with what the business and financial plan currently says. The new financial plan that they're wanting to present and get approved, it lessens the wording for transparency, and it codifies basically what they're kind of already doing, where we can't get the information as Southern Baptists in our local churches, as churches or members, that we're supposed to be getting. It's just real. It's distressing to me. I'll put it that way. It's distressing to me because that should not be happening. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the executive committee report. The executive committee report, when they were reporting, there were several things that they talked about, and I've not tried to put these in the exact order that Jeff Iorg gave, but this is several things. He talked about our shared future. He said our states and national conventions that they need to devote significantly more resources to sending the gospel to people who have never heard Jesus. Well, I get that. And I don't think much anybody's going to be opposed to that. But a little bit of concern. Now, of course, this is the 100th year for the cooperative program. And so there obviously is a big push on the cooperative program. The passing of the Great Commission Resurgence was obviously a hit, a slap in the face of the cooperative program at that point. We've had coming up on 15 years now of, watching that start disseminating. Almost every metric that's out there is going down after the passing of the GCR. I like the way Chuck Kelly put it in his book. He said it wasn't a Great Commission Resurgence, but a Great Commission Regression. And that's exactly what we've seen at that point. So, this continued push trying to get others to give more is kind of what they've continued to do, along the way. And he said that continuing in our shared future, he said all end users must manage cooperative programs funds prudently, meaning everybody who's receiving that money should receive cooperative program funds prudently. What are your thoughts about that statement and him talking about that, kind of pointing the finger? It feels like let me just be clear. My feeling, it feels like that he's saying, look, if there's misuse of funds, it's coming from somewhere else. It's the end user. What do you think, Warren?
No, I agree with you, Brother Bobby. That's not where the problem is. That, in my opinion, that's not where the problem is. And I spent 16 years in West Virginia. And so when you serve in a pioneer state, as you know, as both of you guys know, there has been a lot of effects to those states and Sin Network and all of those things. I was very heavily involved in disaster relief in Florida and in West Virginia. And so this whole thing about transparency needs to happen. We're violating our own Constitution. And I think that the questions need to be asked, and I think they need to be answered honestly and openly. I just really do. And it troubles me that all, and I think it does the two of you as well, all this stuff is tearing at the fabric of the foundation of who we are. And it's actually, and I read Dr. Kelly's book. Dr. Kelly and I was at New Orleans. And I couldn't agree with Dr. Kelly more. He called it 10 years before the GRC even became a thing. And as this pastor, my opinion, that I got tired of hearing people tell me that if I didn't support the Great Resurgence Task Force, that I didn't support the Great Commission. And that couldn't have been anything further from the truth. I believe in the Great Commission. I believe, I mean, that's what separates us from so many other folks. And I support the Great Commission. I think we ought to preach the Great Commission. And I believe that all of this has hindered that goal and that process. I just really do.
Yeah, the issues with transparency that continue to rise is 4 or 5 years now running where that's really been a push at the convention. It's digging and chipping away at trust. And I know it's kind of like the ERLC, you know, the last 4 or 5 months, they've come out really hard and heavy. You had lots of photo ops and bringing in pastors to sit around the table and, you know, lots of those kind of things. It seems like a really good, strong PR campaign. But the reality is the reason that they're trying to do that is because they realize that the trust level has gone way down. All the stuff that's been revealed about the way NAMB has handled stuff. Matt, you referred to the houses they own, the millions and millions of dollars of houses that North American Mission Board owns, while all the time now, our executive committee has had to sell the property where the executive committee offices were in Nashville, and all kinds of other things have happened. Lifeway sold all their stores off, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The snowball just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, you know, at this point.
Brother Bobby, one of the things, can I address that for just 30 seconds? Yeah. I won't take long, I promise.
Yeah.
If you dig into it, and I did a little bit, have y'all looked at the price tag of these properties that NAMB owns? And my question is, having been involved in the state convention, having been to state execs' houses, our guys don't live like that. So who's living in these houses? Who's living in these houses? Who's paying the price tag for the electric and all those other things? I as a pastor, my church is starting to ask those questions.
Absolutely.
And they're wanting to know from me, why should we give to this? You're not living in a house like that. We're not providing you with those things. And missionaries aren't even staying in those houses. Excuse me, I didn't get on a soapbox, but
no, you're right.
It bothers me.
Oh, Warren, you're just a rabble rouser. Stop it.
I've been accused of that before.
You're just a social media rabble rouser. Don't you know? Stop that. Well, and I say that, you know, kind of tongue in cheek, but the reality is that's the opposition. If you bring up something about the North American Mission Board and how they're using money or abuses of power or whatever, in fact, many of that stuff, I don't have it to go on the screen, but the reformnamnow.net website documents a whole lot of this kind of stuff that we're talking about. But when you talk about those kind of things from NAMB, it's very concerning. Because like you said, you got a $750,000 house with this gorgeous pool and all that else, you know, that's in the Arizona somewhere, you know, in a high-end neighborhood. Well, I'm not opposed to reaching people that, you know, are going to have a hard time going through the eye of a needle with the gospel. Okay.
Right.
but I'm not sure that we need to be buying a house at $750,000 or anything else. And Ezel he's publicly said that those houses were are being put there and used for a rainy day. Maybe it's for a rainy day. It's an investment for a rainy day. Well, my soul and body, look at all the things that are happening. Is it not raining already? A storm already? I don't know.
I think it's flooding already.
Yeah.
But and you're not, both of you guys are not wrong with that. And the problem is, my question is, what kind of a message does this send to a lost and dying world? Okay, yeah. We're not being transparent. We've got people, we've got properties that are beyond our means, or should be beyond our means. I mean, I don't know. Brother Bobby, I've never been to your house, and Pastor Matt, I've never been to your house, but I would probably dare say that you don't live in a $750,000 house. And
my whole house probably fit in a bedroom.
Exactly. And when you've got, I was looking at one of the charts earlier about the number of churches that run less than 100 in Sunday school, or between 100 and 250 in Sunday school. How do we justify all of this stuff and investments? Oh my goodness. We're living above the average church member in our churches. And we're asking WMU groups and we're asking Baptist men's groups and I'm sorry, senior adults to give of their money to the North American Mission Board. And then when they ask us, and no, they all don't, because pastors don't always tell it, but when they do ask us, we can't give them the answers they're asking for. Why are we bringing home missionaries? Why are our missionaries that are on the field living below the poverty level? But then you've got these houses. I can't. I'm fathomless as to why it's this way.
Yeah, no. There's a long list of questions. Okay, let's keep moving. Let's go back to the executive committee report. Let's see. We looked at that one about the end users. All end users must manage the funds prudently, he says. And then he comes to the trustee system. I want to park here for just a minute. These are the three things that he's recommending that they're working on with the trustee system. One, state executive-led committee on representation. Secondly, entity presidents, suggestions on trustee qualifications. And thirdly, trustee training course currently being developed. Matt, let's start with you. Where do you want to start?
Well, that's a good thing if the trustee training course is legit, because talking with some of the trustees that I really respect, or former trustees, it seems like a lot of times there's such a knowledge base you kind of need to be a trustee. And if it would help if there's some kind of agreed upon training, but it depends on what it is. I just think prudently, come on, man, that's just, if you were to ask a bunch of us who, a lot of people who watch this stuff, not a lot of members don't, but what was the number one word you used to describe Southern Baptists and how they spend the cooperative program? I don't think prudently would ever come up.
Oh, no.
I'd real quick about the housing. I just wanted to say, you mentioned Lifeway sold off their stores. That's an example of publicly, people were upset, but they knew exactly. He was very clear.
Absolutely.
Whereas I thought that was a great contrast. So they've been clear. Whereas, any kind of this information, housing, all that stuff, you have to go second, third documents. You have to kind of read between the lines to document anything with NAMB. It's like but the whole prudently thing, it just seems like, come on, man, that's no, I don't agree. I don't even agree with that statement. But the trustee training course, Brother Bobby, you've worked with, and you, Warren, have worked with a lot more. Don't you feel like sometimes if it was a good training course, it might be useful? I don't know.
I do.
I'll tell you what I've, Warren, let me get you in here just a second. But what I've advocated for a long time is an outside third party training. that
Oh,
because
okay.
what I know happened just from talking to trustees that served in our state that I had connections with, a whole lot of what happened in the trustee training and their training orientation was PR. It was, here's what we do, and here, let me give you a backpack, and here, let me give you this and give you that, a lot of that kind of stuff. But then it was more PR, and it's more like, you're here to support us, you're here to encourage us. And an outside third party firm, mostly law firms are the ones that do this kind of thing. Typically what they do is they say, here is your fiduciary responsibility. Here's what you're responsible for. Here's what you need to do to hold the leadership accountable. Your job is not to be a quote unquote yes man for the president of that entity where you're serving as a trustee. Your job is to ask questions. But the feedback I've gotten from trustees over the years, and even more recently, is people who are asked questions are oftentimes shunned. They're kind of put down, like, wait a minute, don't do that. You're raising a ruckus. Just, kind of get on board. Go along to get along kind of thing. And that's not the role of a trustee. A trustee is supposed to hold feet to the fire at that point. Okay, I got off my rant. Warren, what were you thinking?
Well, and I'm considered somebody that goes back to basics. One of the things that when I was coming up in Southern Baptist life, we supported training. We supported training at Ridgecrest. We supported training at Lake Yale and other places at the Baptist Assembly there in Norman Park. I taught Sunday school conferences at that facility. Why shouldn't we train our trustees? And I agree, Brother Bobby, an outside firm would be possibly a way to go. But I mean, why wouldn't we want them trained? Trustees should not be yes men or yes women. They should ask questions. They shouldn't be ridiculed for that. And when they're asked questions, they ought to have the information to tell us. I've talked to, in the past, some trustees from the North American Mission Board had specific questions, and I was told that I didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And when I had the figures right in front of me, and I was told that I wasn't reading them correctly. Okay, I may not be the smartest knife in the tool shed, but I know how to read a ledger sheet. And the numbers don't add up. And I've never been, Brother Bobby, I don't know when you were executive director, Brother Matt, I don't know how you all do things, but I've never been comfortable with this lumping all salaries into one bucket and saying, this is what we're budgeting for salaries. Well, why don't we know what these entity people make? Yeah. It used to be when I was involved as a student at New Orleans Seminary, we could go and we knew what Dr. Level made.
Yeah.
We knew what Dr. Kelly made. I mean, and I know that sounds very simplistic in the training that I referred to. I'm sure that sounds very simplistic, but I grew up under a pastor who said that Scripture says, study to show ourselves approved unto God. A workman needs not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And he said that we should do that for our Sunday school workers. We should do that for our committee people in the local church.
Right.
When my father became a deacon in a Baptist church, he received written information about what was expected of him. Ernest Sykes was my pastor, and he said to him, Roy, this is what I want you to do. You need to be willing to teach Sunday school, and on and on, and so my dad had no doubt in his mind what he was being asked to do.
Right.
And so when training comes, I just think we ought to do it. We're spending money on things that are not beneficial, but this would benefit the convention as a whole. Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
Well, if it's uniform,
correct.
Uniform, everybody does that. And Iorg did mention having kind of a standard for trustees to go through. I think that's a positive step in the right direction. Matt, let me come back to you. I want us to look real quickly at a quote that I pulled off of X. This is a pastor out of Florida, Joel Brightenbaugh. He wrote this on X. He said, Dr. Iorg just argued we should adopt the EC financial plan, the new one, the one that they're proposing, because the trustee system has worked 92 to 96% of the time. Yet, Swibbits Southwestern Seminary, has decades of mismanagement. Lifeway Resources had multiple years of loss. North American Mission Board has decades of mismanagement in their history, as does IMB, giving away multi-million dollars worth of real estate in the 1980s. The numerous heresy issues in the 1960s through 80s at seminaries, etc., all due to the lack of trustee due diligence. We need a better system. Vote for the 990 level transparency. Matt, your response?
Well, of course, it comes back to the individual entities because they are autonomous. But yeah, I think it's like there's been this system that has existed leader after leader. Like, I love Paul Chitwood. He's awesome, but it's the whole, it's the nature of the system. And also, I thought our society has changed. This isn't 2000. Thank God for the conservative resurgence. And I do want to highlight one major positive before I continue. The SBC's president's speech right before lunch, of all the wonderful things we are as Southern, as people are Southern, is awesome. Just, it's a celebration. But it's, people don't trust, and people are not, there's a reason culturally why baptisms is up, membership's down. It's a different society now, and we are not
That's right.
existing. There's so many layers to that. And I know shaming messengers to say and intimidating them and all the power plays going on, all that's going to do is lead to less people giving and more people asking their pastor, hey, why are we giving when this is going on? And you can't hide
Absolutely.
anymore. I mean, there's no way of hiding stuff. You have too many YouTube channels, too many, you're not going to have tons of people watching. I have a YouTube channel. It all starts to add up to take the curtain off and reveal what's behind. And so, but they still exist, like they have all their ways. A day is coming when you're going to have a group of messengers sue the Southern Baptist Convention, and it's not good. I don't want to advocate for that.
Oh, I've already heard people advocating that that may be the only way to get the information out. It's a sad thing, but because of the transparency. Let me give you a comment we just received online. CS says this. He says, attempting to train the trustees will be a challenging task. There are likely so many connections with those in entity leadership and current trustees at each. Financial transparency must come first. What do you think, Warren? Is he right?
I agree with it. I agree with it in part. Something has got to. You made a statement, Brother Bobby, about the loss of confidence that Southern Baptists are having. I think until there's true transparency back the way it should have been as it was, until that happens, I'm not so sure that I don't agree with him that training the trustees is kind of like putting the cart before the horse. Let's get the financial transparency. Let's get all the transparency, and my wife asked a question, and I was a little bit embarrassed. I'm not going to lie that I couldn't give her a legitimate answer. She asked me. She said, "Warren, how did NAMB get where it is? How are we where we are? How is the power structure come to what it was?" Gentlemen, I couldn't give her I could give her abouts, but I couldn't give her specifics because the convention has asked, as a whole, has asked for transparency, and it's been denied. Individuals have asked, and you could name them, I can name them, and in the local church, if a church member wants to see a financial statement, they have every right to see a financial statement. What are we hiding? Nothing.
Yeah, it's in the foyer on the table as you come in.
Correct. People have a right to know, and I really do. I think that if we can get this transparency issue up to the forefront, let's rip the Band-Aid off of it and let's do what we need to do. God's going to honor that. I have to believe that God's going to honor that. And,
and that's another issue that's going to have to come up. It's going to be hashed out more tomorrow again. Just a reminder, the 990 level transparency has been put forth several times. And
yes,
last year it was sent to the executive committee. I mean, it had been sent to the executive committee, finally was brought back and didn't have quite enough to make it as far as actually passing it, but that's going to be debated again and put back in it once again for us. Now, let's look again, another slide from his report. This is Jeff Org's report from the executive committee report. He said, church leaders must reject the infectious influence of expressive individualism, the prevailing worldview of our time.
Oh my.
He has, well, he's written this, he said this several times, that it's the individualism that is hindering our giving to the cooperative program. Warren, your thoughts?
I could not disagree more. I could not disagree more with that statement. I think giving is down, and I don't think it takes an SBC executive to tell me giving is down because there's no transparency. There is the questions are not being answered. So what are we going to do? I learned something in West Virginia when I served that great state. West Virginia and Southern Baptists, they don't yell, they don't scream, they don't holler. They vote with their pocketbook. And I said that publicly. I said it as a member of the executive committee of our state. I said, look, if we do this and we have no accountability, giving is going to decrease. That's not rocket science. And that is exactly what happened. And when people when they're talking about cooperative program giving increasing, why isn't the question being answered, how is it increasing? Because I think I have a theory of how it's increasing. And I would probably be told that I didn't understand math again, but when you sell something and you put the money into the cooperative program, of course the giving is going to look like it went up. I mean, or at least that's how I feel. Pastor Matt, tell me if I'm wrong.
No, they've got funny numbers, but that whole statement by him, I mean, I would agree. People are more individual, but I took that a whole different way. Okay, should we start calling him Pope because we all need to shut up and get in line and bow down to him and it infuriates me because it's the whole thing of everybody needs to, that's how I took it. And again, there's different ways. Yeah, individualism, definitely, but that's not altogether bad, good. We would know pride, but I took it like, shut up and just get on board. And I took it as like, okay, I could just hear the same thing from the new Pope. It really it galls me. He doesn't realize maybe he's now insulate, like when we served in Detroit, it's almost like a guaranteed, this, Brother Bobby, if you go into politics in Detroit or state of Michigan, you will be corrupted if you're Republican or Democrat. If you serve as it's just so, I hope somebody challenges him tomorrow during the Q&A because that is, and again, he's a great guy. It's a bully pulpit statement, but I want to be generous because most people really like the guy. So,
well, yeah, I was going to say, I've always appreciated. In fact, I had Iorg to come for two different big conferences that I hosted and did, one in Georgia, one in Michigan. And he always did a great job, sharp guy, very intelligent, worked within the system, at Moving Gateway in California. And I mean, just a long list of things in leadership. And so some of this is kind of disappointing to me personally, because it's like, I'm not sure where this is coming out. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist, not that a rocket scientist is needed, but when you compare the old or the current business and financial plan to what they're proposing, to me, it's pretty obvious. You look at them both, you don't have to get it under a microscope to see that what they're proposing is far less transparent than what's there now, at that point. So it's all a little disturbing.
Well, Bobby,
Yeah, go,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead,
I'm
Rich.
sorry,
Yeah,
Matt.
no. I'm going to try to round this up. We've got a couple
Oh.
of more we want to hit on about things that happened today. But go ahead and wrap it up there, Warren, then let's move on.
I just wanted to also echo, and I'm going to limit my time so Pastor Matt can have his as well. I have a great deal of respect for him. I do, and I'm shocked a little bit at some of it. And listening to Pastor Matt, I agree with him. I with Pastor Matt and what he said about this whole thing, and it infuriates me as well. And we shouldn't be yes people and just simply don't ask any questions and just let it go on as it's gone on. That's why we're in the position we're in. Pastor Matt.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, maybe the benefit of the doubt of asking him to explain what
Sure.
he means, because I'm sure his intent was not to insult, but what I was going to
I
say
agree.
is, choose to pray and think the best of, and anyway, we can move on.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you.
And one of the things that I saw surface today online as well was the lack of ability to ask questions. After some of these reports already, there's just like almost no questions. In fact, one of the frustrations that I saw expressed several times online about this morning is they were running ahead of schedule. Well, they're running ahead of schedule. They don't give more time for business, but they gave more time for the worship and other things that were there. And I'm not opposed to the singing groups and all that kind of thing. That's great, but that's not what this meeting is for. It's great to get some inspiration. The meeting is a business meeting. There needs to be adequate time allotted for business, even if you have to cut out a couple of songs to make sure there's enough room, at that point. All right, let's move on. Our church leaders must reject the individualism. That's what we were just talking about. He also says churches must reaffirm proportional giving and champion giving 10% of unrestricted offerings as a cooperative program gold standard. I have no problem with that. Churches have done that for decades. I pastored 2 churches that gave significantly more than that. One gave 25% of the cooperative program. The other one gave 32.5% to the cooperative program. I'm all for the cooperative program and supporting the cooperative program. The problem is churches like I have a friend actually went to high school together. We grew up together in the same church, and their church now has withdrawn from the SBC. They're continuing to stay active in Georgia Baptist. They're continuing to stay active in their local association, which does a great job. But the reality is they've said, enough of this. We cannot continue to support what's being done and not being able to see what's actually happening. They're just really frustrated. ERLC, NAMB, trustee system, the whole breakdown of everything at that point is really a problem for them and many others. And I don't know that it's going to stop happening. So I think, encouraging people to give, that's great. That's fine. But I don't think that's going to go away for sure. He also says the end users. Go ahead, Matt. I mean,
Another key issue, and I know Southern Baptist, it's almost like it's implied if you're not giving to the cooperative program, let's say you're giving 10% and you're giving 2% to, a church in another church plant, you're not in the gold standard. And it really creates a dichotomy of shame. And I think, I don't know how you juggle that, because there is an expectation of Southern Baptist, the majority of your giving is going to go to cooperative giving. But we're not living in that world anymore. There's a lot of competing things faithful churches can give to, and they just don't feel the traditional binding to the cooperative giving. And when they say things like that's the gold standard, that's communicating if you're not doing that, you're not a good quote unquote Southern Baptist or whatever. And that's just a perception. And I don't know. It's a different world we're living in than it used to be. It's very different.
See, and I agree. I agree with that. And there was a time in my life when I would be spoken to by a pulpit committee, and one of the things I said was, if your church doesn't give 10% of the cooperative program, then that's what we need to strive for. Now, I mean, I've always supported the cooperative program, but I don't recognize the cooperative program that we're living under. And I agree with Pastor Matt on this, that what's wrong with if NAMB is not doing it, and the IMB is not doing it, then why shouldn't we lead our churches to give, to support these missionaries, to get out the gospel? I mean, that's supposed to be the bottom line. And I agree with Pastor Matt about the shame thing. You know, there are churches that now in our world today, even new church plants, that don't have any idea that the 10% figure was ever done in Southern Baptist life. You got to have more gray hair than I do to remember those things.
And it better.
So I agree with you,
like,
Pastor Matt.
Well, what actually has happened is basically we've taken a stick of dynamite, maybe a whole bundle of dynamite, and exploded the cooperative program when we implemented everything going on with the GCR, this Great Commission giving idea, all of that, trying to appease megachurch pastors that the churches weren't giving but 0.5% or 1% or 1.5%. Yet it was hundreds of thousands of dollars because they have multiple millions of dollars of budgets. But your church and my church, normative sized churches that are running 50 or 75 or 150, 200, you know, our giving, you know, like I said, we were giving a lot of money, but our total income in our church was $250,000, $275,000, but we were giving 32.5% to the cooperative program. Don't tell me that Great Commission giving is equal sacrifice. It's just not. Let me give you another comment from the stream, and then we're going to move on. The T Buster, I think's how you'd say that, said we're not getting gold standard information nor service from the entities. And I don't think I can argue with that at all at that point. I don't think you guys can too. So let's move on. Then we talked about the business and financial plan. Dr. Iorg said this plan calls for greater transparency by the entities and their business and financial decisions. Like I said a moment ago, I think that is in direct conflict with what it actually does. And a number of people have come out saying that very same thing. Any thoughts there, Warren?
No, I really don't. It seems to just be, again, that circle and Southern Baptists, I think a lot of us are getting tired of the circle. Yeah. I really do. I mean, maybe that doesn't fit in and make sense, but in my head, it makes sense that we're just tired of the circle. Let's do what we're supposed to do.
I don't even think people are getting too tired. You're just going to have people check out where we're at today. Like they're going to be like, okay, I'll just move on. I don't need to. There's no cultural ties. There's no. It used to be that you could shame people into giving 10%, and there was none of that exists among our culture today. I mean, there are a few, and so it's just. I mean, it'd be interesting tomorrow to ask him, say, okay, does this plan going to tell us how many properties NAMB owns? Is this going to tell us the government entities that are giving? Just go.
Well, we don't even know how many church plants. I mean, about NAMB, we don't know how many church plants. We don't know how much money they're spending for that. We don't know how much funding's going to that specifically.
And how many of those churches are lasting the 5-year mark or beyond it?
Exactly.
You know, and I mean, I read that today, and I was looking at those numbers today, and I thought to myself, you know, that's really a question that needs to be asked. How are these churches doing, or do they still exist? Yeah. You know, where are those numbers? I mean, and I just think one of the things that I was going to say, Pastor Matt, I don't know how it is in your church, but young families, I've found it very interesting. College students, young families, they don't join churches anymore. And I actually asked one of our guys, why didn't you join the church? I don't want to be part of that. I want to come. I want to worship. I want to be involved, but I don't want my name on a piece of paper. Our generation's not joining things. Well, you know, I think Pastor Matt's right. We're living in a different culture, and it's showing in the 10% giving the cooperative program, the gold standard, all of those things. I think that's going back to a generational thing. I mean, I've got 3 children, and most people would not want to hear what my adult children have to say about the cooperative program or about organized religion. I hate to use that word, but they're not overly impressed with some of this stuff.
It's like he stands up and says that. It's, if you look at all those statements, they're built on accepted premises that most of the people don't even accept anymore. And
Correct.
that's just across the board culturally. And so we're trying to do it the same way they've always done it, and you're not going to rebuild it. And
No.
that's just reality.
Yeah. Well, guys, let's wrap up. Tomorrow
Absolutely.
will be a day on Wednesday of the convention, the annual meeting. Big discussion about the women in, not really women in ministry, but women pastors, to be more specific. Tomorrow morning, 11:45 Central Time, and then the 3:00 hour. They're coming back and discussing the trustee issue, some other issues as well, and then we don't know the resolution. Motions 15 through 29 that were presented in the afternoon session, they haven't been assigned a time for any discussion. So that'll have to be assigned in the morning, and we'll find out exactly where that goes at that point as well. So, guys, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll try to recap again tomorrow and see kind of where we end up, see what kind of things surface. There are a number of other resolutions still to be dealt with and to be brought up. And all of that stuff is available at SBC Annual Meeting .net, and so you can download the minutes. You can download all the, not the minutes, but what do they call it? Bulletin, the daily bulletin that has all the resolutions printed in it. So that's all there as well, and we'll drop that in the description of the video as well. All right, guys.
Brother Bobby, thank you for asking. I've kept silent for a very long time, and I've avoided this kind of thing. But thank you for asking us. Thank you for asking me, and I've enjoyed the privilege. And Pastor Matt, good to meet you, my friend.
Good to meet you.
Well, we've tried to keep at least my channel more with pastors that are from normative sized churches, not the mega churches, not that. Occasionally we'll have somebody like that on, but for the most part, people don't give voice to those who are in a church that's running 35 or 50 or 75. It's just like those who really have the quote unquote big platform. So
that's
well,
true.
guys,
Thank
you again for joining us. We're glad you're here. We will do a follow-up tomorrow again as well. And so we're glad that you're here and a part of it. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.